Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your attendance. And, it's funny when I talk to people about gardening, they say, it's winter. Don't garden in winter. Well, that's true. Maybe you're not out there picking through the frozen ground, but you should be thinking about, what am I going to plant? Do I need to get seeds? Do I need to do things now to get ready for that? And I know Linda does this. She's probably got her seeds ready to go and we'll grow them inside. And one of the nice things you do when you have good soils, you start with good compost. So we're going to talk a little bit about compost. And I say we because I've not met the gardener who knows everything. And the good news is I've never met anyone who claimed to know it. So we're all learning in this. So it's a talk. It's not a lecture presentation. It's more of a discussion. I would ask you, if you're going to ask questions, let's stick to the topic presented. And at the end, you can open it up to anything you like. But don't be alarmed if I repeat a question, because the people who are watching on Zoom may not hear you. And the person on Zoom who types in a question will only be seen back here by Siobhan. So she will say what the question is, and I might repeat it so the rest of the Zoomers can see it. That's a lot of background stuff, but I do want you to feel relaxed and be a part of this presentation. That way it goes a lot better. And starting with this particular quote right here, I found that to be fascinating. And I think just about everybody knows who Bette Midler is. It's kind of nice to see that. I think everybody should be a gardener. Anyway, so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about some basics, because you can really go down the squirrel hole, rat hole, whatever, on chemistry, on biology, on worms. I think that's beyond what we want to do today. Fascinating as worms are. So what are we going to talk about? Why compost? Why should we do it to begin with? How does it work? How do we start composting if you don't already have composting in your backyard or some other place? How do you apply it to your garden? And some problem solutions, some options on how to compost, and then that one slide on resources. And I think that same slide is on your handout, which Siobhan and Jackie put together, printed for you. And here's another great quote here. Yeah, that's kind of humbling, It's the soil. So you make good soil, you're probably going to get good results. And how do you start? Compost. So why do we compost? Simple terms, it improves your soil. Well, how does it do that? It adds organic materials. And there's a ratio. You can read different books and you can go to the Master Gardener's courses and things, and you're going to find it's somewhere between 5 and 10% of the soil should be organic materials, 90% other stuff. And that includes sands, clay, fertilizers, you name it, water. It's amazing how much of soil is water. It does help hold the moisture better than sand. If you ever have seen water run through sand, you'll know it doesn't retain very much. So the more organic you have in it, the more moisture is going to be there. When you get to things like clay, that could hold too much soil and you could rot roots. So you want to break it up a little bit. Organics is the way to do it. So it does prevent the compacting of the soil. And if you've ever been on somebody's backyard in the grass, in the lawn, it feels like you're walking on stones and it's grass. It's probably because it's compacted. And around here in New England, when it freezes, you get heaving, and it's not all and level. composting can help break that stuff up. You're still going to have to work it, but work the compost into the soil, but it does help. And we are talking about working it into the soil down to about the first 6 inches or so. If you get down below that, then you start breaking up the base of the soil. And we're not going to go down that rabbit hole today, because that's where the worms are. That's where all kinds of other things are stored. We're going to be talking about 8 inches deep and more shallow. So with all this other stuff we've talked about, this good composting will also let the water go through, and that's what you want for most plants. There are exceptions to that. Those of you involved with the Veterans Home greenhouse, you'll see that we have some papyrus growing in there. That stuff can grow in water. So does skunk cabbage and many other things, and they're all important stuff. But without the organics, you're not going to have the nutrients available for the roots. That's another big takeaway. And I said we weren't going to get into chemistry, but basically these nutrients are held by the organics. They're not held by sand. So they turn into a solution, they're held there, and the roots can get to them, and they travel up the roots. It's sort of like if you went home and you took a vitamin pill and you put it on your hand and said, okay, am I feeling it yet? Am I feeling it yet? Put it into your stomach, dissolves, goes in the bloodstream, it helps. Well, I think it's the same kind of process from a biology point of view anyway. This really does replicate Mother Nature. I remember as a kid in southern New Jersey, all farmland back then, that you could walk through the woods and it just had this wonderful odor to it. It was not bad at all. It didn't have a nasty smell. It had this organic smell about it. It's called humus. The leaves would break down, and if you pushed the leaves away, you were into this black humus that was maybe a foot deep, depending upon how old the woods were. And let me tell you, a lot of things grow in there. The dogwoods love it, the rhododendrons, azaleas, all that stuff that grows naturally down there in New Jersey. Up here, I don't know how natural that is, but we do replicate it. And I have azaleas and rhodos in my yard, and I have to put compost and stuff around it because the acidic, sandy soil up here needs to be worked a little bit, and you work compost into it. There are some other benefits of composting, and you all know that you can reduce the amount that you're throwing away. Some people say up to about 1/3 of your trash. I can tell you that at least 1/3 of our trash is recyclable stuff like cardboard containers, plastic and stuff. But we do not throw any food stuff away unless it's citrus, like orange skins, or bones or fat or things like that. No chicken bones, nothing like that. But so what we throw away in terms of the kitchen scraps is pretty small. If we didn't do that, our trash would also be pretty smelly. So takeaway on this is that the organics are held with this compost, and that makes it available so the plants can grow. All right. So let's talk about some of the roles of plants and nutrients. I'm not going to get into the chemistry, and I'm not the qualified guy. There are wonderful PhD chemists at University of Rhode Island and other places. They can wow you with all their knowledge. But I think anyone who has bought fertilizer for whatever reason, lawn, gardens, is familiar with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Those are the 3 numbers that you always see. So if you see a 5-10-10 fertilizer, 5% of that weight, let's say it's 100 pounds, 5 pounds of that 100 pounds is nitrogen, 10 would be phosphorus, 10 potassium. What's the rest? I don't know. Whatever else they put in there. There might be some calcium, iron, other kinds of things, but then it has to bond to something. So these are what we call the macros, macro nutrients. Below that, there's some of the minor nutrients. And I'm not going to repeat this. You can see what they do to help your plants. If you didn't have nitrogen, your plant probably is not going to conduct photosynthesis very well. And you're going to look at it and you say, what's wrong with this thing? Well, maybe it's not getting enough nutrients. Funny story at Prescott Farm. I think most people know where that is. West Main Road in Middletown. We were doing a soil testing in kiosk, and this very wonderful lady came up and saying, I had 18 years ago, I moved into this house and these rhododendrons were just wonderful. The azaleas, everything was great. And now they look terrible. And I said, oh, tell me more. You know, is it leafing? Is it flowering? What's wrong with it? Well, it's just not looking good. And I'm putting all the mulch around it, and mulch, not compost. Mulch takes energy to break it down, so it's probably stealing the energy from everywhere. And the roots the stuff isn't getting to the roots. So I said, have you ever fed these? After this is like 15 minutes of listening to her, I asked, have you ever fed these things? And she said, no. But so if I hadn't fed you for 18 years, what would you look like? And she said, smiled and said, what's your point? So, yeah, you need this stuff. Now, this one is a scary slide, but I want you to see that this NPK, CA, all that, here they are again. Look in the middle. Look in the middle. You'll see them, and you'll see how wide the black area is on each one of those, and it gets narrow at the other ends. Look straight down to the bottom, and you'll see the pH level. Does anybody know what pH is? Well, pH is a potency of hydrogen. In other words, somebody said, here's a scale I can use. I'm going to make this up 1 to 14. 7 is neutral, 1 is acid, 14 is sweet. At the extremes over here, these things burn. They'll burn your roots, they'll burn your hand. You get in the middle, what we call the neutrals, the 7. This is universal around the world, no matter where you go. All this stuff breaks down neutral. And they say, well, I was always told that oak leaves are acidic and you don't use those, right? If you break it down, it's 7. When it's composted, all of it, doesn't matter. I'm excluding the orange peels, the lemon peels, the bones, the other stuff you shouldn't be putting in there. This tells you something about Mother Nature here. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, but this is the stuff that farmers know. They know that I'm trying to get 7. So if I'm too acidic, I'm going to put lime in there. If I'm too sweet, as they call it, I'm going to put sulfur in there to get it back to 7, because that's what the plants like. If you go to any of the universities online, URI help me out here, UMass Extension, the extensions, and you look up a plant, boing, it'll tell you, grow this in this pH. Does best in, name it, 6.4. And something else, believe it or not, there are some outliers. One of them is an 8. I'm trying to remember if it's asparagus. But there are some outliers. But if you look them up, it will tell you. So if you're having problems with a plant and you're doing the composting and all the other stuff, it might be the chemistry is off. That's all I'm going to say about that this is, yes, everybody's saying, yay. Okay. So let's talk about hot composting. How do we get there? How do we get to this stuff? If you hot compost, you can recycle a lot of your waste. You can do it pretty quickly. The heat can kill the weeds, seeds. It can kill some of these pathogens that might happen to be in there. You know, birds and other animals visit your lawn and your compost piles. This can help if you hot compost, and you can do this any time of the year. How do you tell the temperature? Ta-da! That was a Christmas present from my wife. And you put that into the compost pile and you can tell what the temperature is down there. And this happens to be, you know, an extreme, I know it's almost 3 feet, but it's, you know, 2 feet is fine, but this is going to tell you what's in the middle of that mass as opposed to just what's on the top or whatever. I'll leave this up here. You can look at it later. We're going to talk, the question was, what temperature are we looking for? It does vary based upon what type of composting you're going to do. But basically, I think you want to get your compost up to about 140 to you can even get it to 160. But the problem with that is when you get it too hot, then you start damaging other things. Worms will die at those temperatures. We talk about worm composting in another slide here. You'll see that's 70 to 75 degrees because these temperatures of 140, 150, they'll kill the worms. The worms start heading down anyway where it's cooler. In winter, they might even come up. But there's a slide in here that talks about that, but it does break the stuff down and it kills some of the bad things that are in there. Makes it available and better for your application in the gardens. So what is compost? You know, we talked about putting this stuff in there. What really is it? And I'd say black gold is a term that I copied and used here. It's not my term, but it's a good one. Basically, it's the vegetation in all forms. It's decomposed. It eventually gets to what we call humus. And that's the end state, you know, that dark, rich stuff that you can put in your hand. Doesn't have nasty odors anymore. It's very complex. It's fine. Touching on the chemistry, what it is that this is where the bonding can begin, where those nutrients can bond onto the various parts of the compost. I will not talk about the CEC too much, but it basically says that this is in a solution. These nutrients are in a solution because of electricity, positives and minuses. They attract, they get to the roots or get to the compost in solution. The roots can get to it, take it up, just like your stomach does. Okay. I talked to you before about the neutral pH universally around the world. That's it. Mother Nature decided that's it. That's what we're going to do. We made up the scale. Somebody did. I think it was a German. I don't know if he was a chemist or a botanist, but you could look that up. I wanted to emphasize that composting and fertilizing are two different steps because compost generally doesn't have any of these nutrients. You have to add them. How can you add them? Well, you could probably, if you crushed up eggshells like we do, put them in our compost, that's adding calcium and maybe some other things. If you throw the lime that you buy around here, most of the time it's just loaded with magnesium. You got some of that. Some people say throw your rusty nails in there. I don't think that's a good way to get iron in there. But question is, why no orange or lemon peels? They will break down, but they will kill lots of bacteria and lots of other protozoa that you want to break down the compost. So my recommendation is no. I mean, if you want to do that, fine. It's going to slow down your process. Banana peels, fine. Apples, grapes, all that other stuff. But the acidic nature of those slows down your process. If it's too much, it can probably bring it to a halt. Good question. Okay. So after 1 year, that's what it looks like. And that's pretty nondescript. That is not screened. That's right from my compost pile that had been cooking, and I turned it for a year. Then I put it separated in a pile, and I use that whenever I plant things or whenever I start potting, growing seeds, whatever I'm going to do. I generally don't take that out unless I'm going to do something inside the house. If I were going to do African violets inside my house, I probably would screen it. And then I would add some sort of worm manure. You can buy worm manure. I don't know if you knew that or not. It's very expensive. Or you can wait for a rainy day and get it out of the ground in your backyard. You know what those are? Everybody's seen what those worm castings are. Valuable stuff. Just look online what it costs for a pound of worm manure. Okay, so how does all of this work? This might answer some of the questions about temperatures, but it's a microbial action that breaks down these materials. It's worms, microbes, fungi, protozoa, some bugs, bacteria. Anybody ever go in your backyard and where there used to be a tree and you're digging and you find these big beetles? I think they're called scarab beetles. Those things are breaking down that root, absolutely harmless to anything else. They just eat and multiply in the wood that they're eating and turning it into compost. It's crazy. That's not for me, but bugs seem to like it. There are 3 major types of the bacteria, and you can see these things here, but that temperature is where they thrive. So that's why I'm interested in a thermometer. But you can see this thermophilic 113 to 160, that's where you're getting the most of this. I can go out in my compost pile like you can on a cold winter day and you turn it and steam just rises out of this if it's working right. If it's getting above near 150, you need to turn it and cool it off. Also lets oxygen in, lets some of these gases out. And by the way, that's how this stuff becomes neutral. When those gases are let loose, it takes away those acidic properties. Okay, you can add this compost to your soil whenever you're going to plant something. Remember that ratio of about 10 to 1. And you're going to do it in your first 6 to 12 inches. I wouldn't go any deeper than that unless you are just starting a garden. Let's say you've got grass and you're going to turn it into a garden. You probably will dig that down to a foot, sometimes even more, to get rocks and things out of there. But that's when you can really add a lot of compost, maybe more like 20% compost, mixing it all together. The quality of your compost depends upon, of course, what you put in it and your pH. But if you really let this stuff cook, you won't have to worry about the pH too much. I have actually used the Master Gardener's soil testing kits and processes. And I will tell you, my compost is just about 7. It's maybe 6.9, 7 every time I do it. If I took a test and it was like 5, let it keep cooking. Okay. So how do we get this whole business started? There's lots of ways. One is a vented bin. And if you can imagine pallets, put 4 pallets together, you can start putting things in the bottom. Some other things you might want to do first. You might want to put some sort of screen down. Screen would keep some of the critters out, because you start throwing in nice pieces of lettuce and spinach and other kinds of stuff. Yeah, they'll show up. But if you put screen around it, particularly on the bottom, you can even put a screen on the top. Don't put a solid top on it, because you want moisture going in. You want rain and snow to be in there, and you want the air to get out. That's one way. You want a mass that's about 3 foot by 3 foot. And I learned this probably from one of the master gardener teachers, Roseanne Sherry. What a character what a hoot this lady was. And she basically told us, you 3 by 3, that's where you get a mass, a critical mass where there's enough heat to cook this stuff down. If you only have like a 1 foot by 1 foot, it's not enough mass to get that temperature that you're looking for. 3 by 3. If you get it too big, you're going to be turning a lot more. But 3 by 3 pallets, it's a good start. Put these bins or whatever in the part sun, part shade. You don't want sun to cook them dry. Moisture is required for this. And you want it uncovered or screened so that the precipitation can fall in. And you're going to add your materials. Yes, ma'am. Question. Question is, does the compost pile need sun? I would say yes, it starts helping to get the process going. I'm going to show you some pictures. Mine are pretty much in the shade, and I still get the temperatures, but the sun creeps through the leaves of a magnolia tree. So I'm not putting it in the middle of the yard where the sun will get it and burn it and dry it out. Yeah. Another great question. I find it hard to understand how I can get a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 30 to 1. But that's what the books say is the best. I do know that you can get a lot of nitrogen in there by putting your grass clippings in there. The problem with that is now you're starving your lawn of this compost and the nitrogen. So I only bag my grass on my lawn 2 to 3 times a year. Once in the spring if it's really heavily full of leaves and stuff. And I do it just to clean up. And I put all of that right into the compost pile. If I go on a vacation for a week or more in the summer when it's been raining, my grass is like 4 inches high. If I cut that, it's going to sit there. The sun won't get the grass, it'll kill the grass, or it will hinder the grass. So I would bag that. And in the fall, pretty much maybe if raking doesn't do it, I might bag that stuff again. But then the vegetables and all these other things, and I think I probably get the right ratio. Think of, instead of carbon to nitrogen, think leaves, dead leaves, to green things, like your lettuces, your spinach, cabbage, even carrots, all of that stuff. And I think I probably am more, I don't know, maybe it's 30 to 5. I don't know what the percentage is, but that's not the important thing. I think the important thing is to put these items in there, turn them. If you're getting the temperature that you need, you've got it. Okay, I've pretty much gone over what goes into this things. Anybody see anything strange about this? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Question is, can you put paper, clean paper, shredded or unshredded, can you put that into the compost pile? The answer is yes. It's good. It's a wood product, basically. And I do remember a long time ago, they used to say, don't put the comics in there because of that ink. But now there's a different type of ink, which is supposedly pretty safe. It doesn't have all those other chemicals and dyes and other things in it. So I still don't put it in there. But I don't put cardboard in there only because I recycle cardboard in most paper. But you can put it. Will paper and cardboard break down more slowly than the other things? It's according to how well you shred it, how much tearing up. If you just throw a piece of cardboard in there, yeah, it might take a long time, but it will break down. But it'll also be a good place. You'll find when you tear it open, you're going to find worms in there and other things, which is good because they like to hide in that corrugated part of your cardboard. They tend to wind up in there, I guess, for their little nests, watch TV in there or something. I don't know. Yeah. Question is, should you be careful about what type of wood you use to make sure chemicals and other things aren't in that wood? Absolutely, I would be concerned about that. Most of the pallets that you can get free, because a lot of places just are looking for somebody to take them home and use them. Those are made of wood. A lot of the parts are made of oak, very good. Some of it are pine and they won't last as long, but they don't want to spend the money putting chemical treatments in them. If you get one that's got that green color where they have, help me out here, what's the treatment? Pressure treated, thank you. If it's been pressure treated, I wouldn't use it. I don't know what pressure treated is. It used to have arsenic in it, but they're not allowed to use arsenic anymore. So I don't know what goes into that. I'm sure each company has their own little sacred patented method of preserving the wood. And I don't find that it preserves the wood either. The question is, if you have to go, meaning from the restaurant, the bag or yeah. I would say that the coatings on those are mostly a waxy type of coating. They'll break down. Yeah. The plastic lid, of course, won't. Yeah. So Wendy was saying that she uses those in her compost, breaks it down, tears it up, cuts it, whatever, and it's a waxy, and she puts it in her compost. So Wendy does it. No, I'm serious because Wendy knows what she's doing. She's a master gardener. She's very good. Yes, Linda. Oh, boy, that's a great question. Wood ash. Okay, Lindsay says no. Why not? Well, yeah. Well, the problem with wood ash is, going back to that slide, pH 7 in the middle, where do you think wood ash falls? It is very sweet. Surprise, one of those, you got to be kidding me. But it really is. Anybody, chemists, doctors here can shed light on that? Well, if you use wood ash in small amounts in your compost, I think you're fine. And I do once in a while use some of my charcoal, ash, a little bit in there. Wood ash, you're saying? It's ash. Yeah, wood ash. It's different, but briquettes are pretty much compacted wood. There are some that are chemically treated to get them to light easy. Some of them you don't even have to put fluid, you put a match and it lights. That stuff burns off. So I wouldn't be worried about that too much. But the problem with it is if you put a lot in there, you are going to make it so sweet that you will kill the worms, the bacteria, all those things you're trying to promote. And that's a surprise to me when I read that and learned that. That's a super question. I didn't even think of putting it in here. That's how good that question is. Okay. So I talked to you about grass clippings and being careful not to starve your lawn, because I'd like to see that stuff go down there. And my grass has gotten better and better over the years because I do this. I don't water my lawn anymore. And the only place where I have to consider watering is between my front sidewalk and the street, that strip of grass. And the reasons why I water that mostly is because of dogs, number one. The state pours tons of salt on the road, and that kills the grass, changes everything. So water helps wash that stuff through, and that's about the only time I will water. So if you get the pH right, you get the roots to go down instead of just being on the surface. You've got enough humus in there that the roots go down. They won't get burned by the sun. They're going to get more moisture. And when the rain does hit and it comes down, they're going to survive better with this kind of composting. Our water bill has gone down since I started doing this, learning how to do it right. Okay, let me show you my backyard. That's kind of a, yes.
Is it a good idea
Question is, should you put, if you use fertilizers with pesticides or herbicides, should you put those in your compost? The generic answer that I would recommend is no. But after a certain amount of time, and your bag will tell you, usually it's a month, 3 months, then you can do it. I try to stay away from those products, because if I get my pH right and around neutral, crabgrass does not like it. Crabgrass likes a sour, acidic soil. So if you get that right, the basic thing you're going to have to deal with is that wonderful clover, because clover and grass like it the same way. So the only way to get rid of the clover, if you want, is you're going to have to use an herbicide. Yeah, so I say, okay, I'll deal with the clover. When I was a kid, Southern New Jersey again, clover was added to your grass seed because it was so good. And it is good. Remember me talking about holding the nutrients? Clover does that in its roots. So that's why farmers love to have it in their fields, because it's going to be good for the cattle when they eat it. But it naturally fertilizes the soil by holding on to the nutrients. And while I'm thinking about that, there's some other item that just hit my pea brain here about something that takes nitrogen out of the air. Yeah, they take it out of the air. Yeah. It's interesting how all of this stuff works. You can't read too much.
I've got this creepy Charlie, as you call it. Takes a lot of places. I don't know what I might use this for. Trying to figure it out, but it's so what is it called?
Yep. No. Question is, how do you get rid of creeping Charlie? And it is a weed that grows in your grass, and it grows roots down, but it grows sideways fast. And it has a leaf that is not like 4-leaf clover, but it's got sharp edges on it. Pulling it out is one of the best ways. If it's really bad, bite the bullet, use one of those fertilizers that will, get rid of it. It won't happen overnight. Today's chemicals usually takes like a week to 2 weeks for it to go away. But don't use those grass clippings in your compost for several months. And I would say check your pH, because you're probably going to have acidic soil. So if you can get your soil by down to 7-ish, by adding lime, you're probably going to get rid of that, some of it. You're never going to get rid of all of it. If you want the perfect lawn, I recommend you go buy AstroTurf. Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, I have a lot of experience with this, growing up in the cow and horse country. Question is, can you take buckets of the horse manure, cow manure from Wright's farm and put that into your compost? The answer is absolutely you can. I would recommend, here's what I would recommend. I wouldn't get one bucket of it. I would get like 5 or 10 buckets of it. Put it in a pile, let it cook. It's going to start getting heated up. And then after it's been cooking and for a while, then slowly introduce it into your compost pile. And it is very good. Let me tell you, cow manure, horse manure, they're potent, but when you dilute them, they're very good. That's a real no kidding. That's good stuff. How long do you have to wait after adding it to use the compost? Most places will tell you 6 months. Yeah, put it on in the fall, use it in the spring. I personally have done that, but I've waited a year only because I didn't have to, use it. I could wait. But really, it is good stuff. I have a niece who has a horse, Kara Cromwell, and she's always begging me to take the horse manure. And I have not done that yet, but I really should, because it is that good once it's broken down. And the reason why you want to compost it with the other stuff is you want to get it hot to kill the seeds that are in there. Otherwise, you're going to have oats growing and who knows whatever else in your garden. You don't want that. Sir. How long do you wait to use it after it's been hot? Unfortunately, I can't answer that question. It's based upon what you put in there. If you put a lot of leaves and a lot of grass, yeah.
Or you can actually add it to your pile. How long do you?
Gotcha. I'm with you now. Sorry.
So how long? Let it. You said you put it aside and let it.
Yeah, I would let it cook there for 6 months or less, maybe 4 months. Yeah. But if you're turning it and it's not getting hot, then you've got to start adding stuff to that to make it heat up, like clippings of grass, leaves. By the way, one thing, if you want it to get hotter faster, use your mulcher and bagger while the leaves, when you run it over, that stuff will be hot in a day or 2 days. If you put just the leaves in there, weeks, a month, makes sense. Yeah. But I thank you. I was thinking a different track there, but yeah, you want the manures to cook for a while. If you go to a farm, they don't take that stuff and put it in the field. It sits in a pile, and some of the farmers will actually scoop it up and turn it over, and you'll see steam pouring out of this stuff, even in a dead winter. There actually was a woman in Boston who worked for the Public Works. I think she was a PhD or something, that started a program taking all the leaves and various other, I think they must have had some horses in Boston, horse police, did they have them there? Mixing that stuff in there, and she put pipes with hot water running through it, and she was heating a building with that. Yes, sir. Can you put, now you're talking about buying manure or fresh from the farm? Can you? Yes. Yeah. Can you take that fresh manure from a farm and put it right into your plants, say maybe a week or 2 weeks before you put your plants in? You can do that. I would prefer, and I would recommend, let that cook for a while before using it. So if you want to use it in the spring, I'd get it now, or I would have gotten it in the fall and let it cook. Kills pathogens, kills the bad stuff, seeds. And when you then add it, but not too much because the stuff can burn, when you add it to the compost and then add that mixture into the soil. Let it sit. I would do that stuff all in the fall, and in the spring, it's ready to plant. So cooking and taking time is, I think, the key to this. And that's the planning that you do in winter when you put your schedule down, what you're going to do. If you're one of those persons, and I do that, here's what I'm going to do in January, February, March, blah, blah. You don't have to, but kind of a good reminder for me. But it also lets me know that what I don't want to do, that I don't want to plant something this year. I get rid of that. I'm not going to do that. Okay, so let's see. I was talking about this material here that was in my 4-pallet composter. And here's another view of that. You can see how I split the one in half with a saw and put 4 hinges, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can't see those two. And the latch over here. So closed here, open, turning it with my pitchfork. I have filled this thing, well, this is 20 November, 24 November, filled it up again on 3 December because you can see it had already cooked down to that level. And shaken, not stirred. Oh, no. If you let it alone and you fill that bin up, you might wind up with that much compost. It's incredible. You say, when is this thing going to stop getting hungry? It just feeds and feeds and feeds. But by sometime, see, I don't have any great need for putting leaves or things. It's all in there now from the fall. So I will let this stuff cook now until maybe August or September. Empty it, then start refilling, because that's when the leaves are going to start falling again. That's when I'm doing. That's me. I mean, you may have a different situation. You may have 10 acres and you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. But I've got a small yard in Bristol. I do. Yes, and if you look, I brought some samples of stuff here. Don't worry about it. It's not going to hurt you. Some stuff that is fresh, and you'll see if you look in there, it's got some leaves, some vegetables and other things. Some stuff that potting soil that I bought. And you can look at it, feel it, and compare it. I will go with my finished compost over potting soil anytime. This stuff is not real expensive, potting soil that you buy, but it just doesn't have all of the humus. It's got a lot of whatever they were trying to get rid of, and probably didn't cook it very long. It probably cooked more in that plastic wrapper than it did before they bagged it. Question is, do you get critters in your compost pile, even in downtown Bristol? Small backyard. The answer is yes. Critters. Elaine White, either she or a neighbor, had foxes for 2 or 3 years, litters in there in their backyard. Beautiful red foxes. Possum. Kathy saw a possum fall out of a tree in our backyard one day, and it was dead. We had no idea why. But yeah, so there's possums. I have caught a raccoon. I knew something was getting in and tearing all my stuff apart. So I put a cage in there that Roz Bosworth gave me. And, you know, I put fruit or something in there and caught that rascal. He was enormous. And I just opened the gate, let him out. But I knew it was a raccoon then that was doing all this stuff. Yep. So the question is, what about voles? I would recommend, I've not had voles in Bristol, but others may have. I have seen mice. A couple of years ago, we had a lot of mice running around. Yeah, voles tend to be underground. They will eat roots, particularly hosta. Right. Yeah. So they're probably more in your compost pile for winter for warmth and eating what else you might be in there, but they're really staying out of the weather, I suspect, as you say, for nests. But yeah, so it sounds like yes, but no, we have not. I have not seen voles in downtown Bristol, but I'm sure you have. I would turn your pile more often, and chase them away if you don't want them. Didn't work. Okay. Get a cat. Cats loved voles. I don't remember anybody complaining about voles eating the vegetables, but I'm sure it happens. Honestly, I'm sure it does, but I don't have any experience. Well, there's another one, Roseanne Sherry solution that you don't write down, but if you might try this. Invite, have your male friends come over for a football game and buy a case of beer and lock the door to the bathroom. Chases them away. I'm going to try to go a little faster here. I think we've talked about most of this. Avoid putting citrus in your when you're starting your compost. If you put it in there, then you're going to start killing the microbial, bacterial items there. Don't put rose clippings in there. Roses are notorious for having diseases. It's just the nature of the animal, of the flower plant. No disease materials. Some people by mistake might do that, but if you notice that something is diseased, get it, bag it, put it in your street trash. No raw animal waste. We talked about cooking that first if you can. And no meats, bones, dead animals. That won't work. So if you keep it moist, you're going to reach these temperatures in a few days. Steam can rise in the winter. I've seen it rise in the spring and fall. Turn the pile, definitely if it gets to 155, and you'll know if it's 155, you don't have to have a thermometer. You'll turn it over and the blast of heat will fog your glasses and you'll feel it. You'll know it's time. But you're going to be releasing all of these gases, and here's a list of some of those. And these are what also helps bring down that pH, CO2, ammonia, nitrous oxide, methane, S2S, H2S, water vapor are the byproducts. Plus it adds the oxygen. And what you're left with is humus or compost. Now, somebody asked before about chicken power. It can be very potent. So like the other manures we talked about, you want to let this stuff cook, kills the rest of the seeds as well, and then add it. But I would add it to your warm compost, let it cook, mix it through if you're going to do that. It's good stuff, no doubt. My wife loves to feed the animals. There's a pumpkin. And within that night, I'd say it was a raccoon or squirrels had already destroyed it, and they took all the seeds. Now I will have pumpkin seeds coming up in the fringes of my yard for the next 4 years. Now, there's a couple bins. See the 3 bins there? I have one of those. I made one. They work very well. That's my overflow, one of those. This is not mine, but I have made one. It's an overflow that I get while they're cooking down. And as I turn my pile in the fall, I just start emptying that, put it in there. And when I get more leaves that blow in, I put them in here. So I'm constantly feeding the big compost pile, and that's my reserve to hold them. You got to be careful though. Sometimes there's little L's in there. This is a bin that, again, Roz Bosworth gave me. This is one that my son gave me. And this is a container, all the liquid. There's a couple of vents down there, and it drops the liquid. That's called compost tea. Yeah, tea, brown barnyard tea, whatever. Yeah, I have used that and tried it. It's good stuff. I've used it in my greenhouse. I have not used it in my house. It's pretty potent. So these are just rough numbers I got online. I don't know what the ratio is, but I can tell you it's dark brown. It's like coffee color. So dilute it when you use it. I would probably use a sprinkler head if you're going to use it on your plants. It says that it's usually 6.8, 7.2. I have not actually tested it, so I can't say what it is. But it depends upon what you've got in there. Another option is the trench composting. And you can just dig a hole, start putting in there, put stuff on top, put the soil back on top of it. And there's some benefits, but there's some negatives. If you like the squirrels, be digging, the skunks, rodents, and if you want your dog to go crazy because of all of that, that works. And vermicomposting, worm compost. There's another elf there for you. These red worms are the best. They're not the big night crawlers or anything like that. These are small red worms. And they multiply like crazy once you get them going. I have never added them to my compost, and I have them in my compost. And where I have them, that stuff breaks down really fast and really helps produce good compost. If it gets too hot, you'll kill them. If it gets too cold, they die. So your turning is a little bit more important. I've talked about that. This, they say, is you should maintain it at about 55 to 75 degrees. Don't let it get real hot. You'll kill those little boogers. Yeah, but it's not a complete fertilizer, just like the other compost. If you want more information, this is where I got some of this, ncstateextension.org. Some compost problems. And I think this is a good indicator of, what a farmer would do. If it's wet and it smells, not enough air, turn the pile. If it doesn't heat up, your pile is probably too small. You need the 3x3 type size. Damp and sweet, lacks nitrogen, add grass clippings or something like that, more of your green vegetables from the house. And of course, if it's too dry, water it. I've actually watered it. What month do we have it really dry last year? Was it? Yeah. Yeah, I wet mine, turned it, wetted it again, and it started cooking a lot better. So talked about no bones. This pile stays big. You're not turning it. It's turn it, make sure it's got moisture. If you have pests in there, put the screen in before when you build it. You'll keep them out. Okay, any questions on that? Yes, ma'am.
I have an old.
Yeah. The comment was that have a big pile of compost and the roots from trees are coming right up. Remember what we said earlier, the humus is perfect for the roots. It gives them the moisture they need, and it's going to take the moisture out. It makes them grow better. It's got more nutrients, and I have the same problem. I have rhododendron that come up, and they almost look like vines underneath, and just cut them off with a sharp shovel when I empty it in the spring. And the next year, I'll have just as many. It just grows like crazy in there. That's how good the compost is. You're doing it right, obviously. Question is, by putting a piece of plywood on the bottom with some holes. Yeah, so you also have it elevated, so it's not on the ground. I think what you're probably going to notice is you're not going to reach critical heat as much because you're taking away a source of heat. You're letting that cold air get under there in winter. So I would I'd stay away from that. If you really wanted to do it, I would concrete slab that is slanted so the water drips out. You'll keep the roots out. You'll have some of that ground and heat retention, but you won't have any roots. Just one thought. Yes, ma'am. Question is, can you put pine needles and other kinds of evergreen needles into your compost? In this particular case, it's the spinning type of barrel tumbler. Yeah, and mix it with other things. Yes, you can. They do break down more slowly. It takes, as I recall, more nitrogen to break down those needles. So if you're going to do that, I would consider throwing a little bit of fertilizer in there with it to help feed that so that it breaks down faster. Sure, you could do one-to-one grass clippings and needles. Sure. Yeah. I can tell you, the question is, how long does it take for these rotating barrels to decompose? I can tell you with this, if I turn that every couple of days, it breaks down very fast. I'm not familiar with other types of barrels. I do know people that had stacked plastic barrels. They didn't turn, but they have a shaking device where you shake back and forth and the good for compost falls out in another tray and you pull it out and you can use it. Those are really nice. Very expensive to buy a good one. You can spend $100 and buy a cheap one and you'll regret it. It's just not worth it. My recommendation, sight unseen, would be to keep putting stuff in there, maybe no more than half full, but keep turning it like 1 or 2 turns a day. The question is for a trench composter, if you use a blender to break stuff down before you put it in there, will that help? It definitely will, but most of the time a blender will turn it to liquid, like a sludge. It's not a problem, but first thing that popped to my mind is put it on the ground, get your mulching lawnmower, mulch it, bag it, then put it in the trench and yeah. All right, well, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it.
Okay, I wanted to. My name is Jacqueline. I'm one of the UR Master Gardeners, and I have to admit that I compost regularly, but not in my backyard. I live in a very, I'm on a small lot, 50 by 100, very close to my neighbors. So I opt to compost at the Barrington Farm School. Everyone familiar with that? So I drop off my waste there about 3 or 4 times a week regularly. I'm very faithful. And last year in 2022, they processed 51,000 pounds of food scrap. And it's all used at the farm. And the reason I mention this, for those of you that don't want to compost at home, it's a great place to do it. The compost bins are right next to the police fire station facility. And to mention this to some of your neighbors, to encourage them to do it, because like Gary said, I put out hardly any trash every week. I mean, my bag is so small. So it's a great way to do it. And I'm really thankful to the Barrington Farm School for doing this.
Yep.
I want to thank. No, they don't. They use it at the farm. They use it. No, I have to tell you, I buy compost and I buy the coastal Maine bags. And so what Gary said, the most important thing to think about is I don't mulch every year. I compost. I bring bags of compost and I compost. I mulch about maybe once every 3 years, but the most important thing is to put down that compost. If you want to have a nice lawn, if you want to have nice flowers and good vegetables, you need to compost. And like I said, the Barrington Farm School is a good alternative. So I admit I actually do mine there. So thank you, Gary, for a wonderful program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan, for putting this together. And let's continue to do more lifelong learning programs here at Barrington.
My pleasure, sir.